Hi, Chris.
Hello. And I am a voiceaholic. I do the voice for Professor Layton on the Nintendo DS games, and I do a lot of other voiceover, a lot of commercial work, and a lot of industrial work as well. And this has been a boon for me doing Professor Layton, which is what has me relevant to this particular gathering, as being. It's kind of anime character, it's steampunk in its aesthetic, it's very beautiful stylized artwork, and I'm technically just localization, I'm dubbing for it, but incidentally, and I took great pride in this, in two facts, is that the English version of the game that I voice is 93% of worldwide sales.
Damn.
For 6 games now. And a DVD that's been translated into English. And that British gamers thought that I was actually British. That made me so happy because we Americans, including me on occasion, get British accents oh so very wrong. One of the things we tend to do is over-enunciate because we Americans think of British as being somewhat elevated from the way that we speak, when it actually isn't true. My wife grew up in England, and she said, you need to sort of just, and she's dropped her accent because she's a very shy person and she was getting attention for it when she moved here. So now she just kind of sounds like California, you know, she has nice little rounded R's. But she said, muddle it up a bit. And so instead of doing this, which is what I was doing in the beginning, when I read for it initially, she was like, that's like bad theater actor, don't do that. And I sort of muddled this up a bit, you know, made it a little more lazy. It sounds more authentic. But I've loved doing the voice for Professor Layton, and I also do Inspector Chelney, and who's a great big guy, you know, and he sounds very jolly. So I have to change what I'm doing with my buccal cavity, with that whole resonance chamber of sinuses and soft palate in the back of my throat, to kind of impersonate a different size skull and a different size guy. Basically, Inspector Chelney would be you physically, okay, instead of me. I'm like the little Reader's Digest, you know, elfin version, Keebler version of who he would really be physically. And also Don Paolo, so I also do his voice. And I've absolutely loved it because its following worldwide is huge. When I come to any particular event, of course, it's a very select group of people who are aware of it, but they love it dearly. I think it's darling. I think it's actually like a very warm-hearted and sweet and wonderful franchise. I just think it's a great little piece. And it's one of those things that I'm proud of. I mean, I can actually point to it and go, I got to do that. And I just think that that's a wonderful thing. If anybody has any questions for me at all about anything whatsoever, feel free to ask, and let's jump into it right from there. Yes, sir.
So, ignoring Layton for a second, what are some of the other roles you've been doing?
Okay, some of the other roles I've been doing lately. Incidentally, this is what's weird. Whenever I start doing one thing in the business, other things, the opportunities increase. It's like wherever I go, it's almost like instead of them being something that I have to pay attention to and I'm trying to cultivate and go, grow, would you grow? It's like when I ignore them, they just start to grow like weeds and I have to harvest. And it's so interesting. What I've been doing lately, all of a sudden, when I haven't been paying attention to it and doing a lot of voiceover work, I've been getting tons of film roles and television work, which is why I actually have like this and my beard is getting nice and furry. I'm in a romantic comedy called Tongue Tied. That is a film that we started shooting in August, and then we had to take a break because the other half of the movie is in Spanish, and I play kind of the best friend of the lead, who's kind of a slacker guy. I'm kind of this lovable fool, and and kind of foil for my best friend as a supporting role. And it's about a guy who lives in Arizona and is a DJ, the lead, my friend. And it was written and is being produced by my friend Nate Jones. And he plays a radio DJ living in Arizona that has this very typical world attitude that it's very easy for all of us to fall into, where he's kind of doing a conservative talk radio show. He's like, if you live here, learn to speak English. We're American. And he's doing that. And he makes arguments for why that's his point. But what ends up happening is he has a kind of a stroke-like incident. And usually it happens with physical accidents, and it's based on something called bilingual aphasia, where he wakes up and he can only speak another language. He still understands English, but he can't speak it, and he can only speak Spanish now. And so, and now he has to deal with this guy who is kind of like, I'm sick of people who speak this way. Now he can only speak Spanish. And then the second half of the movie, the whole thing is in Spanish. And it switches from being this English movie to Spanish with subtitles.
Nice.
And we end up going to Mexico to find El Doctor and cure him. And so we're shooting the second half of that actually after I get back home. I live in Salt Lake. And then we fly down to Arizona to do some shooting there and some in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, in the beginning of December, I've got a part, which is awesome, in a 5-picture deal for a series of films called Mythica, where I play, what else? Look at me, a dwarf lord. It's kind of boring to play that role. Who runs a tavern and is this very wicked type character. I guess he's like the Ian McShane character in Deadwood, but without quite so many F words, I guess. So he has a little bit more of a vocabulary. And I get to employ what I would call a bastardized Celtic accent, where I'm not quite Scottish and I'm not quite Irish, but it's fantasy, so it doesn't really matter. And I get to talk like this with a very, lots of texture in my voice. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Lots of killing and burning and scariness.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing wrong with that. But I also do, I'm also doing a lot of commercial work. And you hear me a lot when you go into stores, whether you're in a Kroger store, you'll hear my voice going, come into the pharmacy where we've got that for only this much or whatever. And CVS, you'll hear the forever stamps from the U.S. Postal Service. And all of that stuff. So basically now, when you wonder why you're annoyed, you can put a face. Now I know what I want to punch. Be quiet, I'm shopping. So I do a lot of that work. So yeah, that's the answer to that. That's the very long answer to your simple question. Yes?
How did you first get into the Professor Layton role?
Oh, okay. You know what? They sent out an audition like many that I do multiple times a week, all over the country. The studio was acting as the production house for it. So instead of Nintendo auditioning people, Nintendo hired a studio where they were going to be recording. And that studio sent out an audition to agencies all over the country. So there were thousands of submissions for this. And when I read it, I just looked at it and I thought, instead of trying to get the role, I just went, I get this guy. And I was fascinated with him and I wanted to speak these lines. And I sent it in, and fortune was my friend, and I ended up getting that role. And flying out to Seattle and recording out there, which is really awesome. I love that town. And I've been doing that for 7 years now, where I go out there. There's 2 games that I had to go out to LA and do, and I have friends that I love and work with in Los Angeles, and that was fun too, but I really love going to Seattle. to record it because there's more normal people there. Instead of everybody like, hi, who are you? Can I step on you to get higher? Are you a rung or just a person? Seattle's full of normal people that are like, oh, you do that? That's good. Do you have a real life? And I actually enjoy that. There's a lot of people. Because it's more like my wife. She's like, hey, rock star, take out the garbage. You know? So that's how I got that role. Yes.
Oh, I got a couple of things.
Yes.
I remember you talking in the previous one about how the Japanese voice actors would emulate you as the series went on. Has that been continuing, as you noticed, or?
Emulating me? Did I ever say that?
I think so. Like you said, they start off very bland and drab, and then you said like they started adding more emotion to their voice.
I don't know. I don't know if they did or not. I think that might have been somebody else. That might have been my evil twin saying something like that. Because Yoi Izumi, who does the voice of Professor Layton, is a fantastic actor. But it's such a completely different aesthetic as to what they do. For example, in fact, American men, incidentally, who are being really, really expressive, as soon as they speak Japanese, they often sound effeminate. Because in Japanese, it's very masculine to be very monotone and low. You know, and my Professor Layton, I'm very English in my aesthetic. I'm very fatherly, trying to be very, Luke, it's very important for you to understand me. And I'm speaking like that. You just did like this Wallace and Gromit cheese thing. Just like, cheese, Gromit! And a Japanese is going to be, everything is going to be very flat like that. And Yoizumi manages to have this sensitivity to it without coloring it with anything other than being this very straight arrow. He has a strong sense of right and wrong. And he's also very fatherly and very nurturing, but in a very masculine way. He's kept that character very, very pure. And he and I have something in our voice, I think it's our texture, that sounds very similar. And I think that was part of why I was cast. It wasn't just the interpretation of it, but it was kind of like, wow, if Yoizumi was a white guy, he'd probably sound like Christopher Miller. And so I think that was a part of it. As far as the expressiveness of it, what I did notice is that later in the games, things get much more emotional. I noticed that the third game was probably the most emotionally involved. In fact, I found myself in the booth, it's happening now. As I was watching it to do things and I saw the screen and would go to do the lines, I started tearing up like, this is so sweet. And so I was able to just automatically, from choosing to be interested in it and not trying to come up with something genius, it was like, just open your heart and allow yourself to be affected by what you're doing and let that conduct your performance. It was very easy for my voice to crack and for me to be emotional because I was. So the fact that I'm so open to suggestion was why I was able to be so emotional in that performance. It's like I'm kind of an easy sell. I have to remind myself of that. That's the only reason I'm not a member of several multi-level marketing companies. And, oh my gosh, that sounds like a great idea, and handing over my information. I know that I'm an easy sell, so I choose to be an actor. Anyway. Wow, well, hello there.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, he's actually someone.
I'm Don Paulo.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We meet again later. If you had had like bozo hair and a big mustache, then that was okay to fly off on a machine. Anybody else? Yes.
I was wondering, what was some of your favorite lines, or what did you find kind of comical? Because I know Luke drops his suitcase every game, and you have to put everything back inside. And I was wondering if there's
my favorite lines from every game. Here's one of the, and one will come to me. But let me just qualify by saying one of the things that keeps me at least a semi-highly functioning, what would I be? OCD neurotic actor is the fact that as soon as I'm done with a job or an audition, I do what I call a brain dump. And so when I come home from anything, whether it's an audition or a job, my wife will be, and it took a while for her to get used to this, because she thought that I was just not sharing my life with her, where she'd be like, how was that? And I'm like, I don't know. I did a thing, and then they signed me a voucher, and I got a Slurpee after, it was delicious. You know, like, I just kind of go, like that, and I move on. Otherwise, I would be sitting every day and ruminating, like, oh gosh, with that one line. You know, because I'm so obsessive anyway, that if I didn't create a ritual where I told myself the command of, as soon as you're done with something, you dump, I'll go back and watch things and actually go, did I say that? I mean, I can tell because my ear recognizes my voice now. And I'm like, I know that that's me. That's not even a sound-alike. That was me. I don't remember saying that. And so it's kind of like my own little version of Alzheimer's. I get to meet new people every day. You know, who are you? I'm your wife. Oh, well, hello. You know, so that being said, my favorite lines are when Layton actually gets a bit snarky in the game lines, in the wild lines, where he's like, well, it's not uncommon for someone to make a mistake such as that. You know, where he just starts to act like, I know you're stupid. I love those. Those are my favorite. Probably because they're the closest to my, you know, horrible side of my nature. He tries to be good, but he's very impatient with people who are dull or aren't paying attention. So those are actually my favorite. And that's exactly what you're talking about. He dumps his suitcase and
every time.
And Professor Layton usually gets a little impatient. Yeah, anybody else? Yeah.
I'm guessing Unwound Future, but do you have a favorite in the series? Favorite game?
You know what? Unwound Future is my favorite. Here's the thing. Except that they're all my favorite, and if there are any future games, they'll be my favorite as well. Because I just love playing the character. The fact that I get to go back and revisit a character that's already been established is just a delight. And what they've been doing, you know, it's been like watching Lost, where all of a sudden they like do these flashbacks, and then they flash forward, and then they, you know, that's what's happening with this character. And I'm so glad that he's beloved enough that I get to keep going back and, you know, and standing in this guy's shoes, you know, emotionally at least, and mentally, and playing this character, even though it's dubbing, which means that there are limits to it. So, yeah. Anybody? Yes?
You played all the Professor Layton games, right?
Yes.
Have you solved every puzzle?
Absolutely not. I'm an actor, so I know how to pretend to be smart in those ways. I'm the one who hears my voice going, well, it's not uncommon to make a mistake. That's what I get out of the game. You. And I'm talking to myself, so I'm crazy.
It's like, could you be pretty much telling yourself, I'm yelling at myself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, not unlike the rest of my life. So, yeah, I'm not mathematically inclined or spatially inclined. My dad is a genius spatially. Like, he understands things like that. I'm rather klutzy when it comes to those things. My genius lies in language and things that you can nuance, and some emotional intelligence. But when it comes to practical stuff, I try to nuance that. You can't nuance math or space. Those things are constants. And I'm still like, but if we could just understand each other. It's like, no, the answer's 2. That's, you know. So that's something that I get to at 44 years old, I get to still go back to second grade and like cultivate that, which you can do, by the way. So, anybody else? Yes.
So, how different is the process of dubbing a video game versus a movie?
Oh, I'll tell you what, the movie was a lot quicker. The movie was so quick that it was actually kind of upsetting. Because I was done with the movie in like 3 hours. It was a 3-hour job and I was done. The games...
3-hour tour?
Yeah, it was a 3-hour tour and I was out of there. And the games are usually 3 days of 6-hour sessions. Yeah, with the movie, the other difference was instead of having all these multiple wild lines that you have in a game, it was just bam, scene to scene to scene. And I tend to do an ABC of each line. I have them play it for me, and then I have to dub it. And sometimes I go, we need to rewrite this one line. That's the only thing that'll stop it. Because, like Caitlin and other American actors have said, we care more about matching lip flaps than the Japanese do. Like even the original Japanese one, it's like, and the mouth goes, you know? And they made it in Japanese. And we're trying to get it all to match. And the director will often be like, yeah, Chris, you didn't quite meet that. And I'm like, well, I was trying to match lip flaps. And he's like, well, slow it down. And we'll be like, yes, that's very good. There were 27 lip flaps. And then they go, well, match the lips. And I'll go, yes, that's very good. And then it keeps going. And they're like, well, find a way to split the difference. And the last time that happened, I went like this, yes, that's very good. I just did that. I was like, well, you can't do that. I was like, well, do you want to write a little more dialogue? Sometimes we'll write a little bit more dialogue to make there a reason for that. So, yeah, the games also have a lot more possibility to edit, to cut away and to cut back, even though it's already been animated. They can change the length of the scene. The movie has the flow that it does, and it tends to have a constant soundtrack running through the background the entire time. So you're not going to edit that finished piece, or else music would just jump to something else. So, anybody else? Yeah.
Are you allowed to talk about Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney?
Sure, let's see if I know anything about it.
I just want to know, like, what's happening with you in that? Like, are you already working on it, or?
Well, I'm not allowed to say.
Okay.
Especially not with the camera running.
That's a week.
What's that?
I think that's a week.
I have no idea. It just really sounds like a really great thing. I've been reading online that there's stuff that is supposed to come out early next year. I think it'll be really, really fun if that happens. So, yeah.
Since you got to watch all the scenes, were you like waiting for him to take his hat off at any point?
Yes. I think my favorite is when they go to pictures of young Layton and it's like he's got like this great white man fro. Love that. It's like just this morning bedhead kind of thing he's got permanently. I always picture hearing like Jackson 5 music in the background. I want them to get him all sassy. I think I dubbed one of those like, hey baby, what's going on? Yeah. Anybody? And any questions about anything? So
you said they did like kind of silly. Did they keep any of those?
You know, they might, but I can tell you that Nintendo, as the company that's releasing a game that Level 5 has made, that they're very proprietary about those things, and they lock it down very tightly. If anybody hasn't, maybe some executives at Nintendo or Level 5 have those. And if they ever came out, it would be very easy for them to track that and heads would roll. So
I'm pretty sure they probably just keep it for last. Probably just.
I'm sure they've got it there somewhere, but on paper they probably tell them to eliminate all of that stuff. But we know nowadays that once anything is even recorded, whether you put it up into the cloud or not, it's somewhere. So, yes. So, yes.
You seem to enjoy accents. Is there a certain process typically, other than your wife telling you you're doing it?
Other than my wife telling me I'm doing it wrong, is there a process for approaching accents? Not really. No. Yes, my process is I start with what everybody does, which is with mimicry. I start with just mimicry. I think of an actor that has an or a personality or someone that has an accent that I like, and my ear starts to go, I want to do that, I want to do that, and I've done that ever since I was 3. Okay, so I have like this fetishy like compulsion to repeat things that I hear in the way that I do, with the emphasis and with the tone colors and everything. But then what I do that helped me to become a professional instead of a person with a talent, or depending on how you look at it, with a disorder, what I basically do is I can reverse engineer what it is I'm already doing. And it's not that scientific. But what I do is I break down what I'm doing according to terms that I learned after I was already doing it. Gait, pitch, placement, dialect, attitude. And so, when I hear a voice that I like, and nowadays, my gosh, with Google, you can look up and like just go down that rabbit hole, take the trip, and find out as many things as you can and see if they're relevant. For example, I'll listen to an actor. Like I was watching Inside the Actors Studio a couple of months ago, and I was watching a repeat episode with Anthony Hopkins on it. And I was listening to the way that he spoke, and see, I've always done this ever since I was a kid with Sesame Street. I would repeat the voices that I heard.
You know, and all of a sudden I would start to do this kind of thing, you know, and listen to Sesame Street. I know, this is, you know, Muppet News, and I hear with...
You know, and Grover, and then learning that those were certain people that I could now tell which characters were done by Jim Henson and which characters were done by Frank Oz, and I could hear it right away, because they tended to have a particular placement quality that has to do with the shape of their head and their size and their height and the size of their schnoz, you know, and also about knowing thyself. Know thyself, that you know, biblical and Shakespearean kind of thing, you know, to thine own self be true, and to know yourself and to recognize what your qualities are. I have a big schnoz, and I tend to have dual placement. I tend to speak in my nose and my chest at the same time. So I don't actually have it, even though my voice has a quality of sounding like it has some deepness to it, it's not a deep voice. It's a chest placement and a nasal placement simultaneously. And because if you take that out of the chest and you just put it up into the throat, you'll start to hear that I haven't changed my pitch at all, but now I sound like a Christmas elf if I put it right up into my mouth. Okay, but if you put it the same pitch down into my chest, it starts to have that rich quality, you know. So, and then you add texture to it because I'm getting old, and I tend to speak a lot. I'm starting to get that gravelly tone. So, gait, pitch, placement, dialect, attitude. I'm listening to Anthony Hopkins, and I'm noticing how he speaks, and I just start by imitating it. He's like, well, it was very interesting to be working on Silence of the Lambs. And he speaks in this sort of way. And he runs his words together, and he starts to draw them out at the end of his sentences. And I'm listening to that, and I'm going, okay, what is that he does? Because it's not a typical British accent. And then I find out, really, he says, where were you born? In Cardiff, Wales. And I'm like, oh, he's Welsh. So every once in a while, he has this London accent because he studied at the Royal Shakespeare Academy. But he's from Wales, so every once in a while he'll use his R's. Like that. And then when those R's come in, it starts to sound more like him. And then when he does an American character, because there's him, the way he talks as himself. And then there's when he does a character, and he starts to raise his voice when he's doing Hannibal Lecter. And he starts to talk right here. You know, Clarice, you remind me of a rube. You know, good nutrition is giving you length of bone, but you're still only 2 generations away from porn like trash. And he gets creepy. And so I listen to those things and I can reverse what it is that I'm doing. And so the gait is a relationship of lips to teeth. It's like, is he being very lateral like this and talking this way, or is he being very vertical? Are his lips tight against his teeth? Or are they loose away like this, like a Michelle Pfeiffer duck mouth kind of thing? Then I play with the gait, the pitch. Is his pitch high up here, or is it gone down a couple of notes and gone down to here? His placement, is it very much in his nose? Which the answer would be yes when he's doing Hannibal. Or is it in the top of his mouth? Or is it in the back of his throat? I know people who talk like this. Is it down in his chest? I know people who talk like this as well. His dialect, which is not just an accent, but a way of putting words together, has to do with colloquialisms. And then his dominant attitude, does he tend to be a pushy person, so that's going to change the way that he's saying something? Or is he very, very laid back, and that changes the way that he says something? And even though you can switch within a character, what's the dominant attitude? What's the anchor that it always comes back to? And so all of those things are things that fascinate me, and I have an ability to just hook into those things and not let go. And my brain does that subconsciously, just out of being interested. And then I put those choices into my body so I don't have to use my conscious mind to recall them all, because you can't think of all of them with your brain at the same time. This is too slow. So you give yourself a gesture, and you give yourself a body tension and a facial expression and all of those, and a movement that will actually conduct you to keep those things. And that's what ends up happening, is that this whole sympathetic nervous system actually takes over and conducts you like a conductor with an orchestra. So, does that make sense, or did I just wander off to Tangentville and then leave the planet? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Anything? Yes. No, in fact, I'm not allowed to.
Oh.
But I did find something, and I put it on Pinterest the other day. It made me laugh so hard. Because I walked into Costco. See, I see you guys with your orange shirts. And I went into Costco and I saw Kirkland's signature, trademark, quarter zip orange sweater, 1999. And then I put, where have I seen this before? And then I put this picture of Professor Layton up. It looks exactly like that sweater. It has a collar and then it zips to here. And it looks exactly like it. And then I just wrote, mystery solved, at the bottom of it. So if you want a perfect Professor Layton shirt, go to Costco. And next to all of the jeans and the sweaters, they have this quarter-length Kirkland zip sweater. It is the, they should put the official sweater of Professor Layton.
We feel like hotcakes.
Yeah, it really made me laugh. It'd sell like hotcakes to a few people. But yeah. No, I haven't, and I've always wanted to. My wife wants me to dress in this. And then I tell her, well, when you start talking every day in your British accent again, then I'll do that for you. So, anything else? It's okay if you can't. Yeah.
What is your greatest experience of going to conventions?
My greatest experience of going to convention? My goodness. Let me see if my brain can come up with
Something.
Yeah, I wonder what. My first time, I'll just start by saying this. My first convention ever was Youmacon in 2010. And then I came back in 2011. And then I didn't come for 2012. And then I was invited back to this one. And the only other convention I've been to was a couple of weeks ago up at Anime Bonsai, which is where I come from in Utah. I live in Salt Lake. And it was in Layton, Utah. I was like, I'll be a guest at Anime Bonsai in ... Layton. and that was really, really fun, but it's such a small con compared to this one. And I was really missing this one because I feel the love here. Like a lot of people really actually pay attention here. And being there, it was really funny. I thought of that phrase that a friend has said to me before, where they said, even Jesus ain't famous in his hometown. Because they were like, well, you're a local, so I guess is that why you're a guest here? And I was like, no, it's like one of the #1 selling DS series in the world. Like, no, I haven't heard of it. And I went, well, yeah, I wouldn't have either if I hadn't gotten the gig. I'm a grown man, and I don't play games generally. I'm into voiceover. But they paid me and the check cleared, so I'm here. You know? And the thing is now that I've done it, that I've played the character, one by one I've gotten the games. I only have 1 and 2 and 5. I need to get the other. I need to get Nintendo to send me the other games.
They should.
Right? Send me the games.
I did the voice for you guys.
Yeah, send the voice for you guys. And they'd go, did the check clear? That's what I would say. Already paid you, sucker. But, so back to the question. Tell me the question again, because I'm dithering.
I was
Greatest con experience.
Oh, greatest con experience. I would say that my first time coming here in 2010, I got up on stage for opening ceremonies, and everybody in Team 4-Star went, Billy Mays! Billy Mays! Because I had short hair with my beard, and I was wearing a sweater vest and a tie. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed that I wanted to shrink. But because I'm a performer and I do a lot of improv, I was just like, I took all that horror and I went, you know it's working because I'm shouting!
That's awesome.
And that's when they were like, yeah, you're one of us. So it was the fact that I was able to take that pure terror and actually at least make it work somehow. It was kind of like, good, you can sit at the cool kids table now. Otherwise I would have spent the whole con like, oh, just be over here. And someone knocks my tray out of my hand and goes, oh, Joel! You know? Oh, Joel rules! Yeah. So, yes, now that I'm 40 years old, I know how to get along in the high school level click thing. So that was the highlight for me, and actually everything since then has been right up to par with it. So, yeah.
That might be my other question because
Yes.
I was, instead of like the greatest, what was the lowest, worst
Con experience? Okay, the worst con experience was actually just a couple hours ago. When I was sitting in the autograph line, and nobody had gotten to us yet. They put me like at the far end of the table, and no one was there yet except one guy who came up in full costume, and he said, he goes, wow, what does it feel like to be, in this big line of people, and I guess, you're just not very celebrated or accomplished. And he was just looking at me, and he meant it sincerely. And normally I try to diffuse things like that. I know, I'm so sad. But I was so tired, and fortunately I had enough self-control that I didn't say anything insulting. I just stared at him and went, let the moment get on. I just did that. And he went, oh, well, sorry. And I waited until people came up and I went, excuse me, there's people that want my autograph behind you. That was my only moment of being kind of a little bit jerky. And so the worst thing about it is not what he said to me, but it was the fact that I went all dead-eye like, I'm going to be punitive now. That was the worst thing. It was like, that's so sad that you're still that weak, Christopher. But those things happen. We all have that in us, don't we? We all have that thing that's like, wow, did you just go out of your way to like, not just legitimize me, but to insult? What? I don't even know you. We're not that involved. Why? And that will happen your whole life. You know why? Because we're all just big kids walking around, acting like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, there's a few places.
Sure. And the thing is we all have blind spots in our soul. Everybody has blind spots where they walk around and they do things they didn't know they hurt somebody. Or you know what I mean? So whether the guy intended to or not really doesn't matter. But that was my low. But at the same time, my lows are my moments of humor. Those are the things that I laugh at because comedy is truth plus pain. And I have a lot of true things that are painful that happen to me every day in my life. And the way I cope with them is I look at me and I laugh. I'm just like, you're a dork. I do that every day. I do that every single day. And not just to avoid, but to actually take a look at, to really notice, like, where my Achilles heel is, where my vulnerabilities are, you know. So that was the low point, but you know what, first world problems, that's not really a horrible thing. It's not like, a guy stabbed me once. It's not like one of those. That would be a real low point, right? He said, can I have your autograph? And I said, excuse me, and then he stabbed me in the neck. That's really low. That hasn't happened. And I'm not calling it forth either. So, how much time do we have left? Are we running like
we're 5 minutes, I think.
5 minutes?
Something like that. 5 minutes, yeah, 5 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Did you have another question?
Last time I spoke to you, I think you said you didn't have your, you never got a figure either.
I never what?
Got a Layton figure?
Oh, I did. I did get a figure from Morgan, who runs the club. He gave me the Professor Layton. I still have it in the box. That's my only full-on nerd thing where I'm like, it stays in the box. For resale value, no, don't touch it. And it's on top of a shelf, on top of my books behind an old-fashioned microphone on a little stand, on a high bookshelf in my recording studio in my house. And I have it right back there. People go, what's that? And I'm like, don't look at it. Don't breathe on it. Yeah, I absolutely love that. It will steal your soul. It will steal your soul. It will steal your soul. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, my tongue is growling. Must be din time.
How many times have you had to do like during the Professor Layton games where you've had to do like almost all three of your roles like almost simultaneously?
Oh, one to the other, and they always say, "Oh, feel free to separate them." And I always go, "Well, we can always take it again if I suck because I might." But I give myself the challenge to do that, to jump right from one to another. Where I wish I had three things to say because I can't actually think of what to say and do the voices at the same time. So let's see if I read this. I know. Free Comic Book Day. First Saturday in May. www.freecomicbookday.com. I think that Don Paolo sounds like Zorak from the Brack Show.
That's awesome.
We're not gonna do that. I mean, that's kind of what he sounds like. Except he's always more manic than that. He's never that, nonplussed. He's rather intense. I think Don Paolo is more than a little bipolar, like me. So I just call that extreme living. It's not a problem. It's a beautiful thing. thank you guys so much for being here. And what a wonderful little tender little group. You guys are just delightful. I think the Professor Layton franchise is just this sweet little thing. I love the fact that you could give it to little kids and they would enjoy something about it, and then everybody in the full spectrum, all the way to people come to me and say, my grandma loves your games.
That's amazing.
I just think that that's so incredible that it spans all generations, it spans all of these different cultural gaps, and it's just this sweet little wonderful thing. To me, it's like a Christmas morning. I absolutely love it. And I'm so glad that I get to be a part of it and to share it with you guys. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here.
Coming next year, right?
I hope so. Let them know that I must. You tell them so.
It was on $40. Don't freak him.
That's right. And the other thing is, I came here because, first of all, because Morgan wanted me to, and fans wanted me to, and secondly, because of modern technology. My little daughter got dressed up in her Halloween costume to take me to the airport on Halloween morning.
Oh wow.
She's 4 and a half, and she was dressed as a witch. And then she did, unexpectedly, she did a costume change, and my wife sent me a picture of her in a blue monster costume to go out that night. I thought she was going to be a witch, and there's a picture of her on the porch going, rah! It's really funny. So, and I was able to actually FaceTime and watch her trick or treat at a couple of doors.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I was able to spend that evening, you know, from here in Detroit in a hotel, watching her in Salt Lake, lugging up doors and knocking, getting candy, and the people going, what are you doing, Wendy? To my wife, and she's like, it's Christopher on FaceTime. And they're like, oh, hi. And then it skips to the sidewalk, and I see Evelyn doing this. 4-year-old with her pumpkin and her monster outfit. So, you know what? I can do it because I still get to experience, you know, what my daughter is experiencing, and I love coming here. So, yes, I will come back next year if they will have me. So, thanks again. We'll see you.
Thank you.